All right, Stochastic, here we go. It's your old pal EMac coming to you with one Matthew Belman as we get ready for a little Friday action. Some of you may have thought the weekend started early since you usually get me on Saturday and Sunday, but no, it seems like most of the Stochastic on air talent is out there in New York City. They're going to see how much alcohol can fit inside one Josh Engelman. That should be pretty interesting. But you've got me and Matt tonight. You've got a fun slate. We already had one game postponed. That is Texas in New York. That was called hours and hours ago. There's a little bit of other weather. We'll talk about that. But Mr. Belman, it's been like 2 weeks since I've seen you because you were on vacation last week.
I was. It is. The weekend came early for me getting to do a show with you on Friday. Happy to be home. I was California-ing it for like a week and a half. Nice family vacation, but always happy to be back home. I didn't even notice your setup before, but it looks pretty fancy in there.
Oh yeah, normally I've got the blur going on here, but
Right.
I was at a friend's house. There was a girls' weekend here for about 6 days, so I was at another friend's. They live in Washington State, so I was staying at their condo about 40 minutes away. So I hadn't changed all my settings, but yeah, that's kind of the back area there of the house. So
Respect it.
thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's not too shabby here. One of these days I'll show a beach view picture. Sun's kind of coming in pretty bright right now, so it would not do it justice. But let's start thinking about this. I see we got the usuals in chat. Shout out to Chris Williams there, our favorite Apple guy, dropping in 5 YouTube memberships. We got Man, Myth, and Malachar there. The one and only news god, Ron El Negro Loco, is there. Obi-Wan is representing. So let's get Kyle Gentry, Stephen Leibowitz. I see all the regs there. Let's get the likes going here. Let's get the likes going here, because if we don't get a lot of likes, that's a toxic environment. And, so toxic, he's just going to turn himself loose. If that happens, that would be so toxic. Hey, Melissa's in chat as well. So we've got some fun here. I was a little sad that we lost that New York game. There was a lot of offense there. This morning, I'm going to call up the top stacks tool here real quick. We'll go back to pitchers, but that on the top stacks tool, we had about a 15% chance that Atlanta was going to be the #1 stack. That's holding true right now. You had New York in there, but right now we've got Boston and Houston, 2 teams I'm not overly interested in, which is funny. I thought those were going to kind of slide down a little bit. You've got Colorado in the mix there as well, but I was hoping we'd see maybe some other team rise to the top here, but it's pretty flat over there. Let's focus on pitchers though, Matt. At the top, we have a couple Bucks Deluxe options. You've got Jack Flaherty, you've got Zach Wheeler, you've got Robbie Ray. What are you thinking about pitching tonight here?
Yeah, so I think the clear top 2 is Flaherty and Ray. The ownership is there. That's not going to come as a surprise to anyone. Right now, they're projecting to be a combined 80% owned on DraftKings. That'll be higher in the single entry, higher dollar type stuff. But each of them look really good. I'll talk about Wheeler first, kind of the odd man out. I wrote about him in my Contrarian article today. I think you could make the easy argument that he's the best overall pitcher on the slate, even above how Jack Flaherty is right now. Wheeler is easily the most consistent, and he's pretty much at the top of his game right now. The matchup for him is just a lot tougher than it is for Flaherty or Ray. Only thing I'll say there is Arizona's lineup came out. No Ketel Marte. And, that's obviously a big downgrade because he's one of the best hitters in baseball, more against left-handed pitching, but still hurts their lineup. So I think Wheeler is in play as a contrarian option because he's not getting a ton of love, but I do like Flaherty and Ray more. Flaherty's expensive, but in a great matchup. He's been phenomenal this year. And then Ray is clearly risky because he hasn't pitched a ton this season, and we know Robbie Ray from the past, but 8,600 with his strikeout upside against Detroit at home, it's hard not to like him here. How do you see it?
Kind of similarly. So doing the old Yahoo, I know, but Yahoo locks early tonight. So at 6:45, you actually get the Zach Eflin game, the Remember Me game. He's going for Baltimore against his former team, the Tampa Bay Rays. So I think he's interesting. Otherwise, you know, at the top, you've got Flaherty, right? You mentioned that he was outstanding in his Dodgers debut, 6 shutout innings there in Oakland. On the season, a 2.8 ERA, just under a 1 WHIP. And most importantly, because strikeouts are the currency of the realm here in DFS, he has 11.2 strikeouts per 9 innings. That is really key. Pittsburgh did add Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. They added Brian De La Cruz. I almost said Brian De La Reynolds because, you know, we've got Brian Hayes and De La Cruz, and everybody's named Brian here in some form or fashion, it feels like. So you've got those guys there. Rowdy Tellez is back, or he's healthy again. O'Neal Cruz seems to be healthy again. So it's an okay matchup, but there's no real stars there yet because their guys are, even their good guys are still inconsistent. They're on the young side, or they're sort of, we know what we're getting with the De La Cruz or the Rowdy Tellez. They're kind of where they're going to be for their maximum potential. So I think we can still go to Flaherty. The Robbie Ray, I put him in as a wild card because it's more for a salary. Because 8,600 on DraftKings, 9,500 on FanDuel, 45 on Yahoo. That's pretty spendy. This will be just his 4th start here of the season. He was out, obviously, for the vast majority. Came back after the All-Star break here. In his 3 starts, 14.1 innings, 21 strikeouts, 5 home runs. That's the roller coaster that is Robbie Ray. So you know, careful what you wish for, but Robbie Ray's kind of interesting. I don't think we have the Detroit lineup yet. I know Matt Vierling left the game yesterday. I forget if it was hamstring or back spasms. If he ends up being out tonight, that does take one of the more competent bats out of the lineup. So those are kind of the 2 main guys here. I also am curious what you think about Jameson Taillon. He gets the lucky matchup against the Chicago White Sox.
Yeah, I'm playing the White Sox here, so I'm not on Taillon, but I get it. Like, he's not awful, and he's facing the White Sox, so I understand it. He's decently high in the top pitcher tool. You know, 8.5% chance of being one of those top 2 pitchers. Not a ton of ownership. I do think that ownership creeps up because people see the matchup. Now, he's expensive for who he is, but I mean, who doesn't like to pick on the White Sox right now? For me, I kind of like I do like the other side of it. We'll get to that when we talk about stacks, but on paper, I see it. I get it.
All right. I like this. Who cares about Yahoo? I do. You make money over there. That's what this is all about. Do you want to keep redepositing or you want to withdraw every now and then? I'd prefer to have a little money in my pocket. Taillon, I think he's a neutral option. And it all comes down to the matchup. So the downside is he has a career low 6.99 strikeouts per 9. He's in his age 32 season. So it truly is about going after the matchup here. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you're we're looking for safety here. The White Sox just got done with the 21-game losing streak. They had a 14-game losing streak after they ended their 21-game losing streak, which essentially tied the longest of the modern era for the American League. They immediately lost the next game. So if they lose tonight, that's a streak. That's 2. That'll be 2. So they have plenty of time to get a third 14-game losing streak here. So
they got Grady Sizemore as their manager now. So no more losing streaks.
Well, is that the old Cleveland connection?
Yeah. I mean,
do you know where he went to high school?
I know he's from Washington, so probably somewhere around you.
Moses Lake, Washington.
Yes.
Middle of the state.
So there you go. He was amazing in Cleveland. I mean, loved him in Cleveland. But that being said, it's not because of him why I like the White Sox. I just think I think there was big problems between them and their manager who got fired. So I think we could kind of see a changing of the guard starting in Chicago for the last third of the season or quarter of the season, however many games are left. So we'll see how that pans out. I understand why he's in play, though, as far as Taillon goes, just because it's not really a deep pitching slate. And while he's too expensive, there just aren't a lot of good options, especially if you aren't playing the chalky 2 pitchers, Flaherty and Ray. So all these other guys that we're talking about I would say except for Wheeler, just because he's good enough to be in play on his own. But the tie-ons like Bryce Miller, Aaron Savale, who's a lot cheaper, who's also going to get a lot of love. Like, I think they're all viable as pivots, but I do like Flaherty and Ray from a projection standpoint considerably more than any of them. And man, like Ray is always scary, especially as chalk. And he wasn't good in his only other home start, but this ballpark suits him perfectly. It's hard not to like him in this spot at that price, as far as I'm concerned.
All right. I see somebody said something. Well, there's an issue with one of the tools. I'm not sure which one it is. Guys, if you do support at stochastic.com, the email, or if you are in Discord, you can directly tag the devs. It is the line generator. All right, I'll send something over. But see, it's hard for us to do because we're on the show, right? So show's more important than that. But that's why people aren't always responding there into the in the chat, because the devs aren't always watching this. All right, let's continue through here. I remember we had you kind of liked, I can't remember if it was you or if it was Lindquist that liked Edward Cabrera. It must have been Lindy, I think, the last time he started. He just has a gazillion walks, but he actually had a decent
Great game
in the last one. Yeah, he got his strikeouts have been there. Injuries have gotten him this year. Shoulder impingement. Same thing he had last year. His career walk rate is close to 4 per 9, but it is the strikeouts that are appealing. This game is in Miami. He is going against San Diego. I tried to write up San Diego against him. I just couldn't get there. And you can sort of see why. Yes, we love Coors Field here. And then the rest of the teams are hovering around 5 to 7% of a top stack percentage, because everybody is like, oh, this is good, but not great. So I like this, but not quite. And it's making for some interesting decisions here, or maybe some mini stacks. But how do you feeling about Cabrera here?
Yeah, obviously a very volatile pitcher. He's cheap enough where it's hard not to at least have him in play. It's a bad matchup, but strikeout upside at 6,600 is real here. It's not as good of a spot as he was in last time against Atlanta. San Diego is a better offense right now, and they don't strike out as much, but he's way too cheap. So I do like him as one of the better other options outside of Flaherty and Ray. I think you could make the case that he's easily in the top 5 here as far as pitchers go on this slate at that price.
All right. Let me put this message here.
And I also think you could play the other side as far as San Diego goes as a full stack, because Cabrera is so volatile. He puts guys on base. When you put guys on base, you're obviously at much higher risk of giving up, big home runs. We saw that earlier before he got hurt in that start against Colorado. It was a day slate. I remember it. I did a show with Lofty that day. He had like 9 strikeouts in the first 4 innings, and then gave up a grand slam to Jacob Stallings because he walked 3 guys before him. So that's kind of Edward Cabrera in a nutshell. And wouldn't be surprised if you see something like that again tonight. I don't trust it, but certainly in the pool.
All right. Thank you. All right. We just got a notice here from the devs. They said they pushed through a data fix. It should be working there. So sometimes when you spam the chat with a bunch of annoying stuff, you get put in a little bit of a timeout. I'm not going to ban him or anybody unless you deserve it, but you may need a little timeout from time to time here. Then we get to a bunch of mid-tier groups. So before we go to mid-tier, what do you think about Jose Barrios? This was one I would love to just hear Eric Lindquist just say all sorts of bad things about Barrios. He's not really a fan of him. The fastball is down, the strikeouts, everything's just mediocre at best. He's surviving somehow, but he's going against the Oakland Athletics, who have continued their torrid hitting streak. Now, they're not getting 18 and 19 runs like they were previously, but still, even if you look at the last 30 days, which gets rid of those 2 outlier performances, they're still a top 3 team for scoring, which is just crazy. How are you feeling about Jose Barrios? This is playing with fire.
Yeah, probably. But again, it's kind of a shitty pitching slate, and he's 7,800 against a team that does strike out a lot. So I don't hate it. I don't like it either, though. I mean, he's not very good. His underlyings are worse than his actual numbers. Oakland has power. I think the Oakland stack is it definitely in play. They're hard to stack because like the top 4 hitters are outfielders, which sucks. And the bottom half of their lineup is kind of cheeks, but
Garbage.
yeah, but I mean, it is what it is. Like they're cheap, and if Barrios implodes, like all those guys can get there, especially against a weak Toronto pen, getting a full 9 innings. Yeah, I mean, Barrios kind of likened to Cabrera here a little bit, just that like I don't think he's too cheap like Cabrera is, but I could see him having a good game again in this matchup, but I could also see it go very, very upside down for him quickly. So I'm personally not going to play him, but I don't think you're crazy too.
All right, let's pivot to Boston here. That is one of the weather spots. I see Dick to go. Look at that. He's providing a service for people. Dick to go says, are there any weather issues? So a little bit in Boston, everybody's favorite weatherman says it should not be too much of an issue. There is a chance for delay, but it does not look like there will be any postponement for this game. Those two pitchers are decent, I guess. I mean, I like the pitchers, but when we look at the top stacks tool, they're getting attacked by the top stacks model. You've got Ronel Blanco as the or Boston is the 3rd highest stack probability, again just 6.4%, but they're there, and then right behind him is Houston going against Tanner Houck. Now, Houck Tua has had some issues with walks recently, as well as allowing home runs. So that could be a little concerning. But Ronel Blanco has been solid, and remember, he does have a no-hitter under his belt. How do you like that particular duo?
Yeah, with really good hitting weather in Boston, I don't like either pitcher here. They've got some name brand value, especially Tanner Houck, but he has been pretty shitty over his past 5 starts. And against this Houston lineup, no thank you there. I think I'd probably rather play Ronel Blanco, but he's also more expensive. Boston's been really good against right-handed pitching, so I'm not on either pitcher here. I like the offenses more. It sounded like you didn't like the offenses. I'm going to differentiate with you here.
All right. Let's see what else. Now we're into these sort of questions. We know that outside of last weekend's little meltdown, Ryan Nelson had been pitching much better. I don't particularly care to go against the Phillies. You have Garrett Crochet. We're not entirely sure per se what his pitch count could be. We know he's essentially on a more limited workload here. The White Sox decided not to move him. Ultimately, I think he sort of tanked his own trade market by saying, I'm not so sure I really want to pitch in the postseason unless I have a really big contract before we get to the postseason here. So expecting 65, 70 pitches from him. He doesn't seem to be over appealing. What else do you have as we start to wind our way through the dodgy options now of the pitching section?
Yeah, not a lot to like here. Like Garrett Crochet is far from in play for me at that price point, given just the concerns about his pitch count, how ineffective he's been. I'm not going to play Crochet here. I think the argument you could make is that just it's not a deep pitching slate, and if he pitches well, it's not like he has to beat out that many high-end guys because we just don't have those guys on this slate. But at that price, I'd rather play like Bryce Miller, who's also in a tough spot, but at least I don't have pitch count concerns. Obviously, like all these Seattle pitchers, he's better at home. There isn't a lot on the fringes I like. I think you could make a case for Martin Perez, 6,200. He's a fully stretched out starter, give you 85 to potentially 100 pitches on a good day in Miami. I don't think that's crazy at all. The more I talk about it, the more I don't hate it. Kind of the inverse of Ronel Blanco in that, like, there's not a lot of strikeout upside here, but there also isn't as much implosion risk as there would be. So, yeah, I think Martin Perez you can make a kind of case for. Yeah, other than that, like, it just, I don't know. I understand why the guys getting ownership are getting ownership. Now, I think it's a little bit too condensed. We've talked about some decent pivots, Tyon, Barrios.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't talk about Savali that much, but he's cheap enough where I get it. Edward Cabrera. I don't really think you need to go too much deeper than that. Nothing is speaking to me at all. How about you?
No, but I'm willing to add some names there. Bryce Miller, Seattle going against New York. Tricky matchup. We know Miller's calling card is impeccable control. Not a lot of strikeouts, but he's got a tougher matchup.
He was like the
going
one
there.
guy I actually did talk about.
Oh, sorry, you did. So he's one. You mentioned Sabali there, and then the other. Did you say Martin Perez? Because I'm going to say Martin Perez.
I did.
Yeah, you did. Okay, that's
6,200
really
in Miami.
Yeah, that's about all the analysis you need right there. Strikeouts down, somewhat. His ground balls not as prevalent as they were previously, but 6,200, you get that 18 DraftKings points. All of a sudden, it becomes rather interesting. So this is what is going to be make this a really fun slate. It's one of those confetti, and you can stack the most popular stacks. As long as you're not going with Flaherty or Ray, you're going to be relatively different than a large portion of the field. You go with Flaherty, you could double stack Flaherty and Ray and pick somebody besides a partial Atlanta stack, and you're going to be somewhat different from the rest of the field. So that's what makes a lot of this kind of fun. Leave it with EMac not listening. He's the new lobby. No, I was trying to figure out a different thing on the back end here. Just making sure I didn't ban somebody permanently and just working on timeouts, because sometimes, you got to go sit in the corner, because that's just what happens. Even I sometimes need to take a beat. If I get the dander up, get a little angry, get a little fired up, I just have to take a moment, right? It happens to everybody. No shame in it. But if you can't maintain, that's where we get the issues. So a couple things we want to mention. One, presenting sponsor of the shows, I just got texted by one Greg Ehrenberg and said, you better talk about the presenting sponsor of the show. Otherwise, I don't expect to see you on the Friday show anymore. EMac. It's very sad. So that would be Pick6 from DraftKings. And then I got another text here. It's from Eric Lindquist. He says, you tell him to use promo code Lindy, and you put in $5 over there on Pick6, and you'll get 50 to go play on Pick6 if you use promo code Lindy. So what is Pick6? New game format there on DraftKings. It's a self-contained contest. They post prop lines that are static. They do not move. You get to pick 6 if you want to, so you can pick up to 6. But you make your lineup combinations, figure out what you want, get points awarded for those. It comes down to a little more game theory, because if the masses are all on something that has about a 56% chance of happening, and you want to go on the other side where there's less than 20% of the people that are likely picking that one, all of a sudden you got leverage against the field. We've seen some phenomenal payouts coming when just randomness happens, and it doesn't have to be too random for baseball, because again, a lot of this stuff ends up kind of being a coin flip. It's only available in certain states, but if you have one of the states the first time you play there, if you use promo code Lindy and put in $5, you will get $50 to use on Pick6. Lindquist has had a ton of success on this. A lot of our users in the chat, Odd Shopper also supports looking at Pick6 here. So again, many people say, why are we talking about Yahoo? Why are we talking about Pick6? Because the new game formats are where people don't play a lot. Oftentimes they're softer competition. That is where the edge is. DraftKings and FanDuel, these are not solved games, but the formats are pretty common and most people know what's going on, which is now, instead of talking about gut hunches and feelings like we did back in 2011, we're looking at models and talking about probabilities and boom busts and likelihoods and combinatorial ownership and all sorts of crazy math that if they were teaching math with this stuff when I was younger, this would have been fun. Instead, we got other math. But this is a thinking man's game at this point. You want to get back to the spirit of DFS, the good days. Try some of these lesser known sites or lesser known formats. It's a lot of fun and you can win. That's the key thing. Have fun and win. All right. Are you ready to flip over to stacks?
Sure am.
All right. So let's just look at the cherry on top of the sundae right now. 15+% chance of being the best, highest scoring fantasy team of the night. The one, the only Atlanta Braves. Let's talk a little bit about the Braves. Super expensive on most sites, which is helpful. Are you getting there as you select your hand-built lineups?
Yeah, I like the Braves. They're not getting a ton of ownership. They'll be the highest owned team on the slate, but I don't think they're going to be crazy high owned. They're pricey. They haven't been great. I don't like love them here, but I do think they look like the best stack on the board. And most stacks are coming in like appropriately owned. It's a rare day where when you look at like the leverage and the tools, the highest leverage team is the White Sox, and they're getting more ownership than their top stack tool, projects them to get. But, it's because of how good of a value they are. So only two teams have a better than 1% chance of being the top value stack or top leverage stack on the slate. So it just isn't really there. So when you have cases like that where every team is projected to be owned appropriately, I think looking at the top makes a lot of sense. And the Braves are at the top for me.
Yep. So on FanDuel, they're coming in at 13%. That would be the Braves. So it's an interesting spot. DraftKings, let me hit refresh here. It looks like they've slid just a little bit. Now they're down to 12.5%. So remember why do these things change? Well, remember that we're looking at ownership across a bunch of the other key contributors. They're looking at our stuff. We are all factoring in lineups as they come out, where a lot of the content is popping up, where free content is popping up. Those are the different things that go into the behind the scenes stuffs that we're looking at here. And things are rather sophisticated these days, especially when you get to NFL ownership. When you have a week to play around with it or a large amount of time, you can start looking at social media and other different trends that are in there. Again, I don't know what's exactly in the secret sauce, but I know what I would be chasing down if I had, data scientists looking at this stuff. So don't worry about this stuff moving, but it's always good to be ready to be reflexive. So that coming down makes things a little bit interesting for us here. The going against Ryan Nelson. I kind of respect Nelson now. He was someone I was besmirching his good name a lot of last year, a lot of this year, but it seems like the magic fairy dust that is over there for Arizona right-handed pitching has now been extended to Ryan Nelson. What do you think? Let's look at let's look at Arizona, Philadelphia, and the Dodgers kind of as our late night crew. Let's get them off the table here.
You said Arizona, Philly, and the Dodgers.
Philly
for
and the
stacks?
Dodgers. Yeah.
All right, so Arizona against Wheeler. I mean, I have very limited interest in stacking against Wheeler. I think you can use pieces. Josh Bell's cheap. This Adrian Del Castillo is 2K hitting fifth. Had absolutely been crushing in the minors. Hitting 320 with 24 homers in 100 games this season in Reno. Now, obviously, that's hitter-friendly parks in the PCL, but even still, he's 2K hitting fifth, like with home run upside. I don't care about the tough matchup. He'll probably give you 0, but if he gets a hold of one, he could easily go yard. So I think he's a really good one-off play for cheap that probably won't get a ton of love. As a full stack, no thanks, though. The Dodgers, I'm fine with, but the top stack tool is pretty low on the Dodgers, and it looks like they're going to be over-owned. Sure, they look like good plays. Ohtani, Freeman, Teoscar, Will Smith. I mean, I'm not afraid to pick on Keller, but I just think there's better offenses on this slate to target. Certainly another team I wouldn't mind playing one-offs of. And then Philly. Yeah, Nelson's been better, certainly, but I still would take the Philly side over Nelson. The problem with Philly is they're really expensive. So hard to get there, but that's going to make it harder for the field to get there as well. So I do like Philly if you can make it work. Again, they're just really expensive. So tough to do so, but certainly they're my favorite of the three.
All right. The Mets do have a 3.9 implied run total. That feels more like a late slate play. Jose Quintana having a really solid season, sort of a turn back the clock year, if you will. Even though the Mariners are without JP Crawford and Julio Rodriguez, they did bring in Justin Turner. Even though he is 39, he can still kind of get it done there as a DH. They have picked up off the scrap heap Victor Robles from Washington. They've got Randy Arozarena. He is much better against lefties. You feeling any love there for the Mariners against Quintana, or is that just more of a late slate?
I thought I would be, honestly. I like Seattle, I think, more than most, especially against a lefty, but I'm just not really excited about picking, about stacking teams in this ballpark on such a big slate, even against a guy that I think can, certainly get into trouble as far as home runs go. Um, man, I think I want to like Seattle more than I actually do. Probably will not play them here. I just think there's other teams I like more.
Okay, that's is fair. And then sort of the last one, and then we'll kind of hit the mid tier after this. But the last one on the late slate, you got some leverage going against Robbie Ray there. If Vierling is in, let's just assume he's in. How do you feel about the Motor City Kitties? Is it maybe a couple select guys from the top for you?
Yeah, no, I'm off on Detroit here. Like, certainly there's leverage, but I just don't see them winning this slate in San Francisco. Again, one-offs, mini stacks, sure. And it's baseball, so anything can happen, but you need more than just Ray to suck. You need Detroit to be really, really good also. So yeah, Ray is a guy that can implode and give up home runs, but in this spot, I'm not going to play Detroit. I'd rather play Pittsburgh against Flaherty. I know that, Ray is certainly the pitcher you'd rather target, but I like Pittsburgh's lineup a lot better right now, and it's a much better ballpark for hitting. So between the two leverage spots, I'd rather play Pittsburgh, and they're going to be lower owned anyways.
All right. Now we're going to have some fun here. We're going to get to the Midwest because we have the Cardinals and the Royals here. Michael Lorenzen, 4.5 implied total here for the Cards, 4.7 for the Royals. We have seen that Michaelis is, I think he's age 36 here, I think it's what it is. So he eats innings. There's nothing wrong in that. No shame in that. He's got a 5.1 ERA. His xERA, xFIP, and FIP are all in the 4.3 to 4.5 range. So that's okay. Ground balls sliding, strikeouts almost non-existent, just 6 per 9 innings. That's a career low. But he gets it. He eats innings. He gets to the 6th inning more often than not. So there is value in that for him. But he's going against an outstanding lineup. Some would say it's a rather complete lineup these days. They're going 8 deep. You know what? I'm going to say they're going 9 deep. I'm going to put Kyle Isabel in there because Miguel Garcia dropping down. You got Paul DeYoung in there. That's not too shabby for a bottom 3. Michael Massey gets the draw from the leadoff spot. He's got some nice opposite-handed power. You've got Bobby Witt, absolute superstar at this point. Vinny Pasquantino kind of growing into the power. Remember, he was hurt, so he missed a lot of last year. That kind of curtailed his development, but the double and the gap power is slowly turning into home run power here for the pass squatch. Salvador Perez in the old turn back the clock day. MJ Melendez. Don't look at the batting average. Look at the advanced stats and the power metrics. Don't look at that batting average. It's like 190 something at this point, if it's even that high. But if he connects on the ball, he's fine. And you got Hunter Renfroe. Love this team top to bottom. A ton of ways you can stack it. There's a couple spendy guys like Witt at 6,400. That makes it an interesting decision point going against some of the Atlanta Braves here. And potentially a Shohei Ohtani or Freddie Freeman types. So that makes it a lot of fun there. Bobby Witt, going to be, he hasn't quite got his 30-30 season, but I think Lindquist was telling me he'd be the only player or the second player to have 3 straight years of 30-30 to start their career or something wild like that. But he's been pretty outstanding. So I love Cincinnati. They're one of my counter plays going against the Coors Field extravaganza here. How do you feel about them and anything on the Cardinals side?
Well, you said Cincinnati, but you meant Kansas City.
I'm sorry, Kansas City.
Okay.
I'm looking at
because it's funny.
In my head, I was thinking Midwest, and I was like, I'm going to throw some Cleveland thing at you, and I was thinking about Major League, and it just totally. I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't.
Any chance you ever get to bring up Major League, you're supposed to do it. So thank you for that. Yeah, and it's funny you talked about.
I don't know, Matt. I got a guy on the other line about some white walls here.
Oh, great. Yeah, it's funny. It was like almost a Freudian slip coming from your mouth when you mentioned Cincinnati, because as you're talking about Bobby Witt, I'm thinking about how much I love Ellie De La Cruz. So I like both of them so much. They're 2 of the top hitters on the slate. You could obviously only play one in each lineup, but I like both a ton. I like both sides of this game, St. Louis and Kansas City. I think this could be a spot where we see offense. Neither stack is like jumps off the page at me as like top of the board, but I think that's what we're dealing with basically all over the place outside of Atlanta. And Atlanta's going to be owned. I don't think it's crazy high ownership, but they'll get love. So, yeah, I think St. Louis and Kansas City look like pretty decent contrarian stacks, to be quite honest. I think I like St. Louis a little bit more. Top stack stool likes them more. Ownership's about the same. Yeah, so I think I like both sides.
All right. Yeah, AJ Worth says Kansas City, Cincinnati, same thing. I don't know. Barbecue, Skyline Chili. I'll take the barbecue. So, all right.
Cincy's actually a pretty nice city.
You know what? Funny enough, I have not really been to the Midwest. I've been out to Columbus. My wife actually grew up in Chillicothe, Ohio there. So I've been out in that area, but only been out that way a couple times and never to Cleveland or Cincinnati. So
many people are just from Ohio, it seems.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Toronto against Mitch Spence. Some as a crew we haven't really mentioned here. You worked in the Kansas City mention. DraftKings has the, I don't think it's on FanDuel. DraftKings has the Cleveland Twins doubleheader game here. Yeah, we can get a chance to go after Alex Cobb by the Twins. What do you like as we start to wind things down at getting towards the finish line here with 27 minutes to lock?
Yeah, the Jays are like the one team outside of the Braves that I think you need to be conscious of ownership. And unlike the Braves, I don't like them as much. Like they're cheaper and they're in a good spot against Spence. And they've been better recently, but still is not a lineup I'm excited about stacking on a 12-game slate. I get it because like Varsho hitting second has been pretty good recently and he's cheap. You know, Vlad has obviously been amazing over the past, however long this hot streak has gone on for him. And he's looked like he's changed some things mechanically where this could be who he is, going forward, which would be a kind of a sight for sore eyes considering how much he struggled in the first half. I'm just not going to play Toronto at that ownership. I'd rather play Atlanta. Ownership is similar on both those teams because Atlanta's expensive, but I think it's easy to make it work with Atlanta. I'm not going to play Toronto. The cheap team that I'll play is the White Sox. Mentioned them a little bit earlier. They're low in the top stack tool. They're always going to be low in the top stack tool, but it's very flat after Atlanta. So they have a 2% chance of being the top stack. I mentioned as far as leverage goes, they're the number one team as far as leverage does go. Taillon, I expect to get even a little bit more love than the projections are showing. And the White Sox are just super, super cheap. They're pretty shitty, but they're crazy cheap. And I think Taillon can get gotten. I love Luis Robert at 4,600 hitting second. Vaughn is also kind of pricey, but I like him a lot. Benintendi is red hot. He's 2,300. Vargas still really cheap. I like this White Sox lineup. I think that getting rid of their manager could be a huge just breath of fresh air in that locker room. And baseball's a weird sport. So I do like the White Sox here and kind of their first game off the mat.
All right, that is fair enough. I see some, I'm going to shout them out one more time. Just Yahoo. I don't want to play at Yahoo. Their main tournament is overlaying by 20% tonight. That locks in 2 minutes. So these are good times. Utilize that sort of stuff to your advantage. Always helpful. Always helpful. Any stones unturned? I think we've run through everything. We'll talk some home runs here. We'll chat, fire up some questions if you have them. Doing one last loop around the weather. It doesn't look like smidge in Colorado. I don't think that's going to be an issue. I think Boston's looking okay at this point. Is there anything that we missed, Matt?
I don't think so. Certainly it's a 12-game slate with a lot of similar spots. So there easily could be one team we didn't talk about be the top team on this slate, but that's like every MLB slate. You know what I mean? So teams that come to mind when you ask that we haven't talked about, the Guardians against Louis Varland. Like I could see them winning the slate. I'm just not going to sit here and say like they're my top stack or anything. The Giants against Kenta Maeda. He stinks. I don't love the Giants in this ballpark, but I could see them getting there. So there's a lot of that on this slate.
All right. And because it was asked nicely to take a peek here at FanDuel specifically, I'm going to open up the FanDuel top pitchers tool. So the FanDuel top pitchers tool is relatively flat. You've got these are your top pitcher chances. So meaning they're going to have the most fantasy points. You got Jack Flaherty at 9.8%, Zach Wheeler at 7.1, Robbie Ray at 6.9, and then you got 14 people between 4.8 and 3.8. Very, very flat tonight. So that means if you have a strong conviction about Flaherty or Ray, you definitely want to play them. And it's not going to be that hard to get different. Even if even if that either one of those doubles, it's not going to be too hard to get different from other gamers that are rostering that duel. Again, single pitcher site, but they'll probably end up being the main favorites for everybody. Atlanta is coming in, of course, as the most popular stack. They are not quite, they're barely over leveraged, right? If I'm going to hit refresh again, I think they're like less than -0.5%, -0.2%. So they're coming in right where they should be. If you've got a strong feeling about Atlanta, go overboard. That's where you can get just the raw direct leverage against the field. I shouldn't be surprised. Toronto is up there, 6.5% has them in third, so not really up there, but edging out above a few others. They're kind of interesting against Mitch Spence, but that would be the ones I would look to on FanDuel. But thank you for asking nicely. See what happens. Some people don't ask things nicely. Some people ask things nicely. Who got the answer they wanted more quickly? There you go. You know what we do have? We've got some other fun going on here. We have free best ball content. Free. All you got to do is sign up for Stochastic. Have your email. That's it. Don't need a credit card. Don't need a subscription. But we have free NFL best ball. That is all powered by Matt Gajeski, who has been in the lab eating nothing but tuna and drinking Four Locos in an effort to come up with some new ways to win best ball. Chris Williams says, thank you, El Negro Loco. The community is way better without the trolls who can't even afford their own Pampers or milk. Look at this. Says this, just look at that. Like, I would be sad if I knew that was being written about me, because I know the person's still in chat, right? You can't get banned and put in timeout and not still watch the show. That's the beautiful thing about this. What else is fun here at Stochastic? We talked about how you could get $5 into $50 with the promo code Lindy as you are playing Pick6 over there on DraftKings. That's always important. And then we've got the likes and the podcasts. So like the channel, subscribe. We're cresting towards 100,000 subscribers here. And then we also have the Stochastic Podcast Network. I say that to remind everybody because we've got coming up college football content, betting content, and DFS content. That is from Matt Gajeski and Ben Raza. We have all of our strategy NFL shows go out on that podcast content. I say it because I like to walk around the beach here or walk around town. So I like to have lots of podcasts that I can listen to because I like them. And that makes me happy. And we got a whole bunch of good ones here, but that is on the Stochastic Podcast channel. Let's see. Home run calls. Matt.
Give me Luis Robert.
Okay.
Taking Ty on yard here.
I wrote up Ty on. I'm feeling bad. Oh, I'm looking here. I actually got 9%. So I put in $121 on Yahoo. I'm currently winning, since it just locked, I'm currently winning $130. So that means they're paying me tonight to play on their site. I got to monetize it, but wouldn't you like it if you put in 120 bucks on DraftKings and as soon as it locked, you were already winning 130? That seems pretty good, Matt.
Would be nice.
Just saying. Just saying. Not a bad way to go. So you did your home run call. Rank your top three pitchers, because we'll get, and I'll say what my cash game lineup here is in DraftKings. Let's rewind things down.
My top three pitchers.
Yes.
I'm going to say Flaherty, Ray, Martin Perez.
All right. So Flaherty and Ray, those are my cash game pitchers. It looks like I'm going to have at least 3 Atlanta Braves in my DraftKings cash lineup. It will be some combination of Austin Riley, Matt Olson, Sean Murphy, Jorge Soler, and then Ramon Laureano's 2,300. We would prefer him against lefties, but if he's starting against a righty, unless it's some high leverage situation, he isn't going to get pinch hit for if a lefty comes in. So that's a bonus for there. You've also got some cheapies in Andrew Benintendi and Nicky Lopez that are allowing you to do pretty much whatever you want. Maybe that's getting in Shohei Ohtani. Maybe that's getting in Bobby Witt Jr. So a lot of ways you can go there, but that's kind of your core there. Maybe you sprinkle in a Davis Schneider, a Jake Berger, etc. But that should give you a nice little core to build around. If you're not a fan of Bobby Witt, the other spendy guy you could go to would be Yordan Alvarez. Different positions, but it's kind of in that same pay range there. Your top stacks, sir, and we will wind this down.
I'm going to say is like on paper, projection wise, the Braves, no surprise to anyone. I'll say that I like both sides of the Houston-Boston game. And I like the White Sox, as I've talked about. The other team that we haven't mentioned at all that I think is in play is the Cubs. Crochet is a big question mark right now, and the White Sox have the worst bullpen in baseball. So that alone puts the Cubs in play for me. Top Stack Tool likes them quite a bit. I think they're wildly in play. And the other team that, again, I don't think I'm going to play, but my heart wants me to like them more is the Mariners.
All right. That makes me happy because my heart does like the Mariners because, they're the Mariners.
It's just such a bad ballpark for power.
But it is, I think it's close to 80 degrees. Let's do one last look there. So that's kind of warm for Seattle. It is 83 at game time. So that is very nice. Again, remember, wind doesn't matter. They always have a certain baseline humidity there because they are right by Puget Sound, literally right by Puget Sound. But once you get up to 80 degrees, that is rather warm, and it does help turn T-Mobile Park into a little bit more offensive friendly. Still one of the best pitching parks in the league. Of course, the Mets somehow get an upgrade going from Citi Field to Safeco to T-Mobile Park. Yeah,
it's just tough on these slates for teams in San Francisco and San Diego and Oakland and Seattle and Miami to get there on these big slates. Doesn't mean it can't happen, and it happens, but most of the time it doesn't happen.
Right. So I'm going to go run the Sims because that is the Stochastic product here, the DFS fantasy Sims. We got them for MLB, we got them for MMA, we got them for NASCAR, got them for football, got them for baseball, and basketball, of course. So $180 a month gets you the Sims here. Always fun to utilize those. You can we keep changing all the ways you can do inputs. But I just want to say there's so much good stuff in the Sims. Don't put your thumb on the scale too much when you're using these. Give a couple ROI boosts to a few hitters that you like. If they're not coming up enough, maybe tend to suppress some of the pitchers because it tends to go overboard if somebody has a high positive expected ROI. But otherwise, let it work its magic. I've already won the 20 max twice, the $1 20 max twice, and 2 different mini maxes, which, hey, at a grand a pop, that's pretty cool. It's not Sean Jeezy cool who wins those every day falling out of bed, but I try to figure out what days he's not playing and make sure I'm playing those days. So it is a lot of fun over there. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in on a Friday night. You'll get back to the regular crew, on Monday. But you know what? It's a McPherson Belman weekend here because you're going to get us on Saturday and Sunday. Good times ahead, I promise. You guys can follow Matt on Twitter at Fantasy Tips Matt. I am at EMac DFS. And of course, it is Stochastic _COM. With that, gamers, good luck.